Derek Chauvin is literal human garbage. The only people to defend him and his actions on May 25th, 2020 were that of his defense team. These officers are doing their jobs in a highly stressful situation, according to their training and according to the policies of the Minneapolis Police Department. A direct quote from Eric Nelson, Chauvin's defense attorney. Some people may agree with that statement, but none are publicly defending him, especially not anymore that he's been convicted. Derek Chauvin was charged with second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter, of which he was convicted with all of those. I believe if you hold someone in a chokehold and sequester their ability to breathe for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, then that is intentional murder. First-degree murder. You have about 3 minutes of not being able to breathe before you can die. This example is over 3 times that long. He had 3 minutes to find a better way to restrain George Floyd. 3 minutes is a very long time. He had 3 minutes of calculated decision-making abilities. He had 3 minutes of being a senior officer with backup to issue commands to his backup officers, and he failed. Instead of 3 minutes, but for 9.5 minutes, he failed his department, his city, and his country. Literal human garbage. But before I digress with my own emotions, George Floyd is no longer with us, but George Floyd hasn't left us. President Biden has now signed an executive order on the 2-year Remembrance Day of George Floyd's death.
2 summers ago, in the middle of the pandemic, we saw protests across the nation, the likes of which you hadn't seen since the 1960s. They unified people of every race and generation. Athletes and sports leagues boycotted and postponed games. Companies and workers proclaimed Black Lives Matter. Students staged solidarity walkouts. From Europe to the Middle East to Asia to Australia, people saw their own fight for justice and equality, what we were trying to do. The message is clear. Enough. Just enough. Look, almost a year later, a jury in Minnesota stepped up and they found a police officer guilty of murdering George Floyd, with officers and even a police chief taking the stand to testify against misconduct of their colleagues.
Right, 2 counts of
I don't know
misconduct.
any good cop who likes a bad cop.
Second-degree murder, third-degree murder.
But for many people, including many families here, such accountability is all too rare. That's why I promised as president I would do everything in my power to enact meaningful police reform that is real and lasting. That's why I called on Congress to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. The Senate's in my desk. So I'm asked why I haven't done this executive order earlier. If I'd done it, I was worried it would undercut the effort to get the law passed. This is a call to action based on a basic truth. Public trust, as any cop will tell you, is the foundation of public safety. If they're not trusted, the population doesn't contribute, doesn't cooperate. 2 sides of the same coin, inextricably linked. And the principles of fairness and equal justice are at the core of each of them. For the wheels of justice are propelled by the confidence that people have in their system of justice. Without that confidence, crimes will go unreported. Witness fear to come forward. Cases go unsolved. Victims suffer in isolation while perpetrators remain free. And ironically, police are put in greater danger. Justice goes undelivered. Without public trust, law enforcement can't do its job of serving and protecting all of our communities.
Right.
But as we've seen all too often,
So you're going to restore
public trust is frayed and broken,
the trust, Mr. Biden.
and that undermines public safety. For the families here today,
He's going to restore public
across
safety,
the country,
right?
who've had to ask why this nation, why so many Black Americans wake up knowing they could lose their life in the course of just living their lives today. simply jogging, shopping, sleeping at home. Whether they made headlines or not, lost souls gone too soon. Members of Congress, including many here today, like Senator Cory Booker and Congressman Karen Bass, alongside members of the Congressional Black Caucus, House and Senate Judiciary Committees, spent countless hours on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act to find a better answer to that question.
Okay. Do we find it?
I sincerely thank you all for your tireless efforts, but they're not over.
Not over yet, huh? So this is just a start, Mr. Biden?
The House passed a strong bill. It failed in the Senate, where our Republican colleagues opposed any meaningful reform.
Right, another chance to throw some shade.
So we
Nothing
got
like
to work on this
separating
executive
us.
order, which
It's
is
them
grounded in
damn
key elements
Republicans.
of the Justice and Policing Act and reflects inputs of a broad coalition represented here today. Families courageously shared their perspectives on what happened to their loved ones
Yeah.
and what we could do to make sure it doesn't happen to somebody else. Civil rights groups and their leaders of every generation who've given their heart and soul to this work provided critical insights and perspectives.
Okay.
The executive order also benefits from the valuable inputs of law enforcement.
The what?
The executive order also benefits from the valuable inputs of law enforcement.
I still...
The executive order also benefits from the valuable inputs of law enforcement.
The Valley
Put their
Business...
lives in line every single day to serve. Now let me say, there are those who seek
Gotta
to
get the
drive a wedge
transcript.
between law enforcement and the people they serve. Those who peddle the fiction of public trust and public safety are in opposition to one another. We know that's not true, but it occurs. I believe the vast majority of Americans want the same thing: trust, safety, and accountability. The vast majority of law enforcement risk their lives every day
Okay.
to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Their families wait for that phone call every time they put on that shield. Just yesterday in Uvalde, brave local officers of the Border Patrol agents intervened to save as many children as they could.
Okay.
Here
Tragic.
today, I want to especially thank the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Fraternal Order of Police, as well as the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Federal Law Enforcement Association,
Okay.
the Police
union?
Executive
Yeah.
Research Forum, Major Cities Chiefs Association, and others who stepped up and endorsed what we're talking about today. As divided as this nation can feel, today we're showing the strength of our unity. It matters. This executive order is going to deliver the most significant police reform in decades. It applies directly under law to only 100,000 federal law enforcement officers, all the federal law enforcement officers. And though federal incentives and best practices that are attached to it, we expect the order to have significant impact on state and local law enforcement agencies as well. Here are the key parts. First, the executive order promotes accountability. It creates a new national law enforcement
Just on
accountability
federal law
database
enforcement.
to track records of misconduct so that an officer can't hide the misconduct. It strengthens the pattern and practice investigation to address systematic misconduct in some departments.
Boy, it's hard to understand you, boy.
To address systematic misconduct in some so that an officer can't hide the misconduct.
Right.
It strengthens the pattern and practice investigation to hide the misconduct. It strengthens the pattern and practice investigation to address systematic misconduct in some departments.
You gotta open your mouth more when you talk,
It
man.
mandates all federal agents wear and activate body cameras while on patrol.
Okay. Don't we already
Second.
get those?
The executive order raises standards, bans chokeholds, restricts no-knock warrants, tightens use of force policies to emphasize de-escalation and duty to intervene to stop another officer from using executive
the hell?
Emphasize de-escalation and duty to intervene to stop another officer from using executive force, just as occurred. It didn't occur, but people
Boy.
testified it didn't occur in George Floyd's case. And third, the executive order modernizes policing. It calls for a fresh approach to recruit, train, promote, and retrain law enforcement that tied to advancing public safety and public trust.
Okay.
Right now, We don't systematically collect data, for instance, on instances of police use of force. This executive order is going to improve that data collection.
That sounds like a good thing.
There's a lot
This
more
one
as
here
well.
is
The bottom
sounds
line, the
good.
executive order includes reforms that have long been
Why
talked
wasn't
about
there?
or finally implemented at a federal level. And it comes at a critical time. By building trust, we can strengthen public safety,
Okay.
and we can more effectively fight crime in our communities.
All right.
And we can do one more thing. We can show what's possible when we work together.
Okay.
Look, I know
shade then.
progress can be slow and frustrating. And there is a concern that the reckoning on race inspired 2 years ago is beginning to fade. But acting today, we're showing that our dear friend, the late John Lewis, congressman, wrote in his final words after his final march for justice in July of 2020. He said, "Democracy is not a state. It is an act. Democracy is not a state. It's an act, an affirmative act." And today we're acting. We're showing that speaking out matters, being engaged matters, and that the work of our time, healing the soul of this nation, is ongoing and unfinished and requires all of us never to give up, always to keep the faith. I close with this. Over 2 years now.
It's hard to keep faith if you ain't got faith.
We've gotten
You're
know
here to
one
restore
another
faith.
and pray with one another.
Okay.
Not figuratively, literally. I promise the Floyd family, among others, George's name is not just going to be a hashtag. Your daddy's name is going to be known for a long time.
Right.
That as a nation, we're going to ensure his legacy and the legacy of so many others remembered today.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about their death, but what we do in their memory that matters. The purpose. In just a few moments, I'm going to deliver on that promise when I sign the executive order. And Kamala and I will continue, along with our friends in Congress, to get meaningful police reform legislation to my desk as best we can, as quickly as we can, beyond what we're doing here, affecting states as well, directly.
Okay.
On this
Moving
day,
beyond the federal.
we're
It's
showing
to come.
the America we know.
This is our first step forward.
We're a great nation because the vast majority of us are good people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing beyond our capacity, nothing. When we act together as the United States of America.
And quit throwing shade.
This is a start, a new start. May God bless you all. May God protect our forces. And I'm going to go sign that executive order. Thank you.
Amen, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go get that pen and paper going. All right, everybody, get up here. We're going to take some photos. Releasing executive order. This is history.
I'm about to sign Advancing Executive Accountable Policing and Criminal Justice Practices to Enhance Public Trust and Public Safety. And since I only have one pen, you're all going to get a copy of this. I don't have to do one stroke at a time with each pen.
Huh. He's a funny guy.
God willing, thank you.
It's got to be it then, right? This is done. The first step forward. Gonna hold them federal police officers accountable.